Wait a minute, that's not right. It was quite a bash with 5 title matches between 2 shows. But was it a non-title match on SmackDown that stole the show? And the streak is over! The streak is over! But what streak was it? Okay! And the news! And the news indeed, it was the Bash in Berlin from Berlin, Germany, I guess as you would expect. So anyways, we had 3 championship matches on the card, so let's start with the main event for the World Heavyweight Champion between Gunther and Randy Orton. Well, it was certainly not a work rate champion type of a match, but it had that incredible big match feel to it with the crowd going absolutely bonkers at the beginning and throughout most of the match. So congrats again to another amazing European crowd. They have all come up big in their own special ways. So really an amazing tour. That said, we're going to be happy to be going back to the good old USA for quite some time after this. However, back to the match, this was truly a battle of neck versus arm as Gunther worked holds early and often on Orton's neck, while Orton whipped Gunther into the steel steps early and saw that Gunther had injured his shoulder in that attack. So Orton remained focused on his hurt limb for the rest of the match. And indeed, it mostly was a good strategy as Gunther failed to get Orton up for several power bombs. And on one of those, Orton had a venomous strike and was able to land an RKO. But, of course, Gunther found a way to kick out of that. So Orton looked for another way to try to win the match, and he cleared off the German announce table and moved the steel steps into position, but he did this really, really slowly, allowing Gunther to make a comeback and recover. But after a while, Orton still found a way to land a side slam through the announce table. So of course, Orton had to get Gunther back into the ring in order to win the championship. So once he did, he went for one more RKO, but he pushed Orton out of the way and locked in a sleeper. And Orton valiantly tried to get out of the sleeper and was able to do so very temporarily a few different times. But at the end of the day, Gunther just would not relent and eventually caused Orton to pass out, and the ref had to stop the match, so Gunther retained the title. For Gunther, this was his first defense since winning the title at SummerSlam, and he's now won 8 in a row since losing at WrestleMania, improving to 11-1. For Orton, he's still a very impressive 8-2, but unfortunately for him, both losses are to Gunther. Well, we also had the WWE Championship match kicking off the show between Cody Rhodes and his friend Kevin Owens. And this one took an unbelievably long time to get going as these two friends really needed to feel each other out. So as you would guess, it was a pretty even match for several minutes, but eventually Owens hit a rolling senton off of the middle rope and went for a stunner that Rhodes was able to reverse right into a crossroads. KO did kick out of that one, so the match continued, and there was a spirited flurry of kicks and punches between the two men, with Rhodes eventually getting the upper hand with a second super kick. And when he went for a super Cody cutter, well, his knee that Owens alleged to be injured during the week proved to be true as he tweaked it and fell off of the top rope. Owens had the opportunity to capitalize on that, but he refused to attack Rhodes' knee, at least momentarily, because as Rhodes went to the outside, KO apparently had enough and decided to kick that knee, and when he went for his apron powerbomb, well, he just couldn't pull the trigger there either. So instead, he got Rhodes back into the ring where he was able to finally land that stunner. But Rhodes kicked out of that one too. So Owens had to regroup and he decided to go for a Swanton bomb. But Rhodes had enough time to recover. He got the knees up and then landed a crossroads to retain the title. So for Cody, this was his 5th title defense since winning the championship at WrestleMania, and like Gunther, he improves to 11-1. Well, for KO, he at least proved that he was not the same man that he used to be all those years ago when he turned on all of his friends. But maybe he also proved that he was not good enough to earn this title shot, and he falls to just 4-3 in one-on-one matches. In our final championship match, we had the Unholy Union of Fire and Dawn defending against Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair for the Women's Tag Team Championships. Well, Fire and Dawn may not have proven to be a great tag team in the win and loss column, but they have proven to at least come with a game plan every time, and this time they tricked Bianca into not knowing who was actually starting the match. And they also had some good tag team psychology by keeping Bianca in the corner, much like they did a few weeks ago on SmackDown, and then they were able to double team her outside the ring while the ref kept Jade away from Bianca and from helping. They also had plenty of good combo moves with first a tarantula super kick combo, then their patented gory bomb Russian leg sweep combo, and then they attempted their final big combo with that backbreaker swanton bomb combo, but Jade pulled Bianca's braid and got her away just in the nick of time to break it up. So despite all this, anytime that Jade or Bianca had the opportunity to show their power and athleticism, they were able to overcome Fire and Dawn, and eventually they were able to land their DDT German suplex combo to pin Isla and regain the Women's Tag Team Championships. Well, they get their revenge, and they are still undefeated in traditional tags at 8-0. But for Fire and Dawn, even in their very best effort, it was still not enough to take down Bianca and Jade, and they fall to just 1-4 in traditional tag matches. We also had 2 very fun and exciting non-title matches. First, we had the strap match between Drew McIntyre and CM Punk, and McIntyre did not waste any time as he attacked Punk from behind while Punk was still making his way to the ring, and McIntyre threw him into the barricade and whipped him a couple of times before finally putting the strap on his arm and making the match get underway. And McIntyre completely destroyed Punk at the beginning of the match, just continuing the brutality with several whips and a few different slaps. But Punk somehow managed to counter it with a go to sleep that just slowed McIntyre down for a little bit. And the action continued with a lot of brutality, and several minutes later, McIntyre was able to land a Claymore and touch 3 of the turnbuckles, but as he went for the 4th, Punk recovered just enough to roll out of the ring and pull McIntyre away and into a steel chair that was set up in the corner of the ring. Punk then took advantage and landed another GTS and was also able to get to 3 corners before McIntyre was able to stop him. And McIntyre took advantage and threw Punk through a table that was set up ringside, and well, he had to get Punk back into the ring so he could go for the 4 corners. So he put Punk on his back and carried him to each of the corners, but Punk was also cognizant enough to hit the corner as well. So after both men had touched 3 corners, well, they struggled for the 4th and fought it out, which would stop the count, so neither man was able to get a 4th corner. After a little back and forth, Punk was able to then lock in a sharpshooter so hard that McIntyre even tapped out several times. But of course, you cannot win or lose a strap match via submission. So the match continued and Punk had to eventually let go so he could go for each of the turnbuckles. But McIntyre somehow recovered and landed a neck breaker to stop Punk. And at that point, McIntyre was feeling himself and pulled out the bracelet from his tights, which I think we might not want the bracelet back, seeing that you pulled the bracelet from the tights. But I guess in Punk's defense, he was kinda out at the time, so he didn't see that. Nonetheless, McIntyre landed a Claymore and went for the four corners, but somehow Punk was able to recover and land a GTS as McIntyre went for the final turnbuckle. Punk then saw the bracelet, which galvanized him to land two more GTSs, and then finally he stopped, grabbed the bracelet, hit one more GTS for good measure, and finally hit that fourth turnbuckle to win the match. And this is the win that breaks the streak of 3,876 days since Punk's last win in WWE, which is more than 10 years and 7 months. So Punk, congratulations, you are 1-1 in one-on-one action. So for McIntyre, he doesn't have anything nearly as exciting as that to report, so he has alternated wins and losses over his last 6 matches and is still an impressive 9-4 in one-on-one matches. And lastly, we had a mixed tag match between the Judgment Day's Dominic Mysterio and Liv Morgan taking on the Terror Twins of Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley. Well, the Judgment Day tried just about everything in the book to try to win this one, and early on it was Liv getting the best of Priest when she grabbed his legs and then punched him and then even raked his eyes. But Rhea was eventually able to take out Liv and even turned her attention to Dom, where she attacked him a few times and put in her Prism Trap submission from the turnbuckle, and when she went for the Riptide on Dom, well, Liv was there yet again to stop her. But the Terror Twins turned things around yet again, and they both landed Razor's Edges in stereo, which of course caused the other members of the Judgment Day to come out, with JD and Carlito first distracting the Terror Twins. But even though they were momentarily able to slow them down, when Balor joined into the party, they finally had the numbers advantage that they needed, and Liv hit an amazing sunset powerbomb off of the steel steps and into the barricade, really slowing down Rhea for quite a while. But after Priest was able to slow the men down for a while, Rhea was finally able to turn the tide, and just as when she was about to hit a Riptide, well, JD was there yet again to distract her. But Priest this time was not having any of it, and he took out all 3 other members of the Judgment Day and then clotheslined Dom over the announce table, which allowed Rhea to finally land that Riptide on Liv and win the match. Well, for the Terror Twins, you would think this was their first mixed tag, but they actually won a 6-person mixed tag in 2023 with Dom. But I guess we shouldn't count that, so they are 1-0 in mixed tags. Well, for Dom and Liv, they are simply now 1-1 in mixed tags. And we also had a big night on SmackDown the night before, also in Berlin, when we had 2 championship matches. So in the main event, we had Nia Jax defending her WWE Women's Championship against Michin, and this one was a street fight, so Michin came out with a whole bunch of toys, and sure enough, she had a plethora of kendo attacks during the match. We also had a fun table segment where Michin pulled the table out from under the ring, Nia put it back under the ring, and then Michin finally got it right back out from underneath the ring, which it was eventually used. But before we get to that, Nia had a nice reversal of Michin's springboard DDT and instead slammed her through a trash can. But just minutes later, Michin was able to hit that springboard DDT, landing Nia's head on top of 2 different lids. But the most impressive move of the match was when Michin was able to powerbomb Nia through one of the tables set up in the ring. So at that point, Tiffany Stratton came out with the Money in the Bank briefcase, and sure enough, she was true to her word and went right for attacking Michin. But as soon as she turned to the ref and kind of looked at the briefcase, making you wonder if she just might go for the cash-in. However, Nia, who was still laying on the ground through the table, she saw Tiffy there, so Tiffy then turned right back to Michin and was about to go for a prettiest moonsault ever when Bayley came out making her first return since SummerSlam, and she was able to clothesline Tiffy and chased her out of the ring, eventually throwing her over the barricade. With all of that time to recover, Nia was able to land a Samoan drop through another table that was set up in the corner. Then she dragged Michin all the way to the other side of the ring, putting a trash can over top of Michin's head and landing that annihilator to get the win. But of course, Nia just wasn't quite ready to be done there, throwing a piece of that table onto Michin, and then also a steel chair and a couple more kendo shots to finally end it and end the show. Well, for Nia, that was her first successful title defense since winning the championship at SummerSlam, but she is on a roll with 8 straight wins and goes to 11-3 in all one-on-one matches. Well, for Michin, she always looks pretty darn good in the ring, but she also pretty much always loses, falling to just 1-7 in all one-on-one matches. Well, for the other championship match, we had the LA Knight Invitational Open Challenge, and sure enough, it was Germany's own Ludwig Kaiser who answered the call, and the crowd was hot for Kaiser, and that just made Kaiser ramp up his aggression even more, slamming Knight against the apron and then throwing him into the steel steps and then hitting that running dropkick. But somehow Knight weathered the storm and he was able to counter Kaiser's STO reverse DDT and instead landed a side slam and then the BFT to get the win. Well, for Knight, this was his second title defense in 2 weeks and he's won 6 in a row, going to 10-3 in one-on-one matches. Well, for Kaiser, he is still winless since returning from his injury, losing 3 in a row and falling to 3-1 in one-on-one matches. But our match of the night and possibly the match of the weekend was Andrade versus Carmelo Hayes in their 4th battle in a row. Well, things are quite heated between these two at this point, and they both fought each other before the bell even rang. But soon enough, Andrade was able to land some incredible moves, highlighted by his corkscrew plancha onto the floor and a springboard Spanish fly. However, Andrade was distracted a couple of different times by an exposed turnbuckle, with the first time it allowed Hayes to hit a super kick on him, and later on, while Andrade was on that top rope, Hayes was able to yank out Andrade's legs out from under him, which caused Andrade's head to hit that exposed turnbuckle, and then Hayes hit his shot with nothing but net to pick up his 2nd consecutive victory and tie the series at 2-2 against Andrade. Well, I guess he's slowly working his record back up to now a still pretty bad 3-6-1. But I guess the upset of the night was really that Hayes didn't do anything after the match to make Andrade even more aggravated. But maybe Hayes really is under Andrade's skin at this point, as he's now lost 3 in a row, falling to 6-3 after a 6-0 start. And lastly, we had a tag match between Apollo Crews and Baron Corbin taking on the newly named Los Garza. Well, I guess they are not Los Lotharios anymore, and I guess that rejoins them with the Kabuki Warriors for having a tag team name separate from their larger faction name of course, Legado del Fantasma. And speaking of the rest of Legado del Fantasma, Elektra, per usual, distracted the ref, allowing Escobar to throw Corbin against the steel steps. So Berto landed a nice arm drag off of the top rope and then tossed Crews into the air, where Garza hit a big knee, which they now call the MTY, to get the WIN. Well, for this newly named Los Garza, they've won 2 in a row against Cruz and Corbin, going back over 500 at 4-3 in traditional tags. Well, for the other guys, they have only had these 2 traditional tag matches and are 0-3 in all tags. And with that, let's go beyond the mat for SmackDown, where Solo Sikoa in a pre-tape segment said that the Bloodline would face both the Street Profits and DIY next week in a tag team match, and he also reiterated that he would be coming for either Cody Rhodes or Kevin Owens regardless of who won, so I guess Cody, be on the lookout for Sikoa. Elsewhere, we had Grayson Waller tell Corbin that Theory said that Cruz and Corbin weren't half of the team that A-Town Down Under was, and Corbin was not so happy and got into Theory's face about it. So Theory admittedly stepped up to him like a man and said it right to his face. However, when Cruz got Corbin out of there, well, Theory then finally told Waller that he kept getting him in trouble and that A-Town Down Under was falling apart. However, Waller apologized, saying it's hard for him to keep his mouth shut, and Theory accepted this apology, so I guess things are back to usual for now. And lastly, Vinci is making his arrival next week, so good for him. And with that, let's go to STFs. And in this week's STFs, well, even with 2 shows, it was a very light slate. So let's start with SmackDown, and we had the LDF yet again with Elektra distracting the ref, and then Escobar throwing Corbin into the steel steps, so both of them will pick up fines. Then we had Nia continue to attack Michin with some weaponry in the ring because she just wasn't ready to have enough, so she will get a 1-week suspension. Then at Bash in Berlin, McIntyre attacked CM Punk before the match and used the strap on him a couple of times, so he will get a 1-week suspension. And of course, it wouldn't be an STF without a Judgment Day edition, so we had McDonough, Carlito, and Balor all trying to help out Liv and Dom and getting physically involved as well, so all 3 of them will pick up fines. Between 2 amazing shows, we had 4 successful title defenses led by Gunther defeating Orton in front of a raucous crowd. We also had Jade and Bianca proving to be an unstoppable force in traditional tags, regaining the women's tag team titles. And CM Punk put a stop to his nearly 11-year streak of not winning a match in the WWE. I'm Doktor O'Kay, reporting on the WWE, where everything is okay.